Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her small office on the space station UES Horizon. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air systems. On her desk was a message that had arrived 3 days ago from the Galactic Academic Council. She had read it dozens of times, but it still seemed impossible to believe. The message was simple but carried enormous weight for all of humanity. After 50 years of being treated as junior members of the galactic community, humans were finally being offered a chance at full membership. They would have the same rights as the other 17 species that made up the council. They could vote on important decisions. They could access advanced technologies. They could finally be equals among the stars, but there was a catch. There was always a catch. One human would have to pass the most difficult language test in the known galaxy. It was not just about understanding alien languages. The test required perfect grammar across 17 different species' ways of communicating at the same time. Not one mistake would be allowed. Not a single error in any of the languages. Elena looked at the holographic display floating above her desk. It showed examples of the 17 languages she would need to find someone to master. The Zephyrian language had 47 different ways to show when something happened. Past, present, future, and dozens of variations in between. The Cortex did not speak with sound at all. They communicated through musical tones that had to be exactly right, or the meaning would change completely. The Thraxian language was even stranger. They did not just talk about what happened. They talked about when it happened, when they learned about it, and how they felt about the time difference. A simple sentence like, "The ship arrived," became a complex puzzle of temporal relationships. That could take minutes to say correctly. Elena rubbed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. She had been the head of the Xenolinguistics department for 15 years. She had worked with alien languages every day of her career. She spoke 5 of them fluently herself. But this test was something entirely different. The door to her office opened and Captain Jake Morrison walked in. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. The responsibility of commanding humanity's most important diplomatic mission had aged him visibly over the past year. "Elena," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk, "I just got word from Earth Command. They want you to pick our representative by the end of the week." Elena nodded slowly. "I've been going through the files. It's not good news." "Jake," Captain Morrison leaned forward, "what do you mean?" "I mean we might not have anyone who can pass this test." Elena activated her computer and pulled up personnel files. "Look at our best people. Dr. Alex Chun has mastered 5 alien languages, 5 out of 17. Lieutenant Maya Johnson is brilliant with Zephyrian grammar, but she struggles with basic Thraxian concepts." The captain studied the information floating between them. "What about Dr. Patricia Williams? She's been working on Corthic communication for years. She can handle the musical aspects, but she's never been able to grasp the emotional overtones that native speakers use. The council will notice that immediately." Elena switched to another file. "Dr. Kevin Brooks knows 8 languages, but only at a basic level. He makes small mistakes constantly." Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Outside the office window, stars moved slowly past as the station rotated. "So what are you telling me? That we can't do it?" Elena looked at the files again. Each person she had reviewed was talented and dedicated. They had spent years studying alien cultures and languages. But the test required something that seemed impossible for any human to achieve. "The council made the rules very clear," Elena said. "1 attempt, no retakes. If we fail, humanity stays in probationary status for another 100 years. And if we don't even try, then we admit we're not ready to be equals. We stay as junior members forever." Captain Morrison stood up and walked to the window. The view showed the vast emptiness of space dotted with distant stars. Somewhere out there were worlds inhabited by the 17 species that made up the council. Each species had developed their own unique way of communicating over millions of years of evolution. "What about using translation computers?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "The council specifically forbids any technological assistance. It has to be pure linguistic ability." They want to see if we can truly understand other species, not just convert their words into ours. Why is this test so important to them? Elena had wondered the same thing. I think it's about more than just language skills. The Council has been around for thousands of years. They've seen species come and go, they've watched civilizations rise and fall. Language is how they determine if a species is ready for true membership. How so? Think about it. If you can't perfectly understand how another species communicates, how can you negotiate with them? How can you form alliances? How can you avoid wars caused by misunderstandings? Elena gestured to the alien text on her screen. Perfect grammar isn't just about following rules. It's about showing that you respect other cultures enough to learn their ways completely. Captain Morrison returned to his chair. So we need someone who can think like 17 different species at once. Exactly, and I'm not sure such a person exists. Elena brought up more files. Dr. Lisa Wong had impressive credentials but had never shown interest in more than 3 alien languages. Commander Peter Davis was a skilled negotiator but relied too heavily on translation programs. Each candidate had strengths, but none had the universal linguistic genius the test demanded. What about you? Captain Morrison asked. You're the department head. You know these languages better than anyone. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I can communicate effectively in 5 languages and understand the basics of 4. More, but perfect grammar in 17 languages simultaneously? I would fail within the first 10 minutes. The captain was quiet again. Elena could see him processing the implications. Earth Command had spent enormous resources preparing for this opportunity. The entire human race was counting on them to succeed. And they might not even have a candidate capable of attempting the test. There has to be someone, Captain Morrison said finally. We've got 3,000 people on this station, scientists, diplomats, cultural experts. Someone must have the ability, Elena had already checked. She had reviewed every personnel file, every academic record, every language certification. The station's population included some of the most brilliant minds humanity had produced. But brilliance in one area did not translate to the impossible linguistic mastery the test required. I'll keep looking, she said. But Jake, you need to prepare Earth Command for the possibility that we might not have anyone ready for this test. Captain Morrison stood up slowly. I'll send a message to Earth tonight, but Elena, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about membership in the Council. If we fail this test, or if we don't even try, it sends a message to every species in the galaxy. It says that humans are not ready to be taken seriously. After the captain left, Elena sat alone in her office. The alien languages on her screen seemed to mock her with their complexity. Each one represented millions of years of evolution, cultural development, and unique ways of understanding the universe. How could any single human mind contain all of that knowledge? She thought about the species that made up the Council. The Zephyrians with their emotion-based communication, the Korthax with their musical language, the Thraxians with their complex relationship with time. Each species had developed their language to match their biology. Their culture, their way of thinking. Elena looked out at the stars again. Somewhere among them were worlds where beings communicated in ways humans were still trying to understand. The test was not just about language skills. It was about proving that humanity could truly become part of the galactic community. But as she sat there in the quiet of her office, Elena could not shake the feeling that they were about to face an impossible challenge with no one capable of meeting it. 3 days had passed since Elena's meeting with Captain Morrison. She had spent every waking hour reviewing personnel files, looking for someone who might have the skills needed for the impossible test. Her office was now covered with papers and data screens showing language certifications, academic records, and psychological profiles. Dr. Ben Carter knocked on her door and entered without waiting for permission. He was Elena's assistant and had been helping her search through the station's 3,000 personnel files. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by something Elena had rarely seen from him: excitement. Elena, you need to come with me. Right now, Ben said, his voice barely containing his enthusiasm. I think I found something, but you're not going to believe it. Elena looked up from the file she was reading. Ben, I've been through every linguist, every diplomat, every cultural expert on this station. Unless you found someone hiding in the maintenance tunnels, I don't think there's anyone left to consider. Ben smiled in a way that made Elena nervous. That's exactly where I found him. Elena stared at Ben for a moment, then saved her work and followed him out of the office. They walked through the station's corridors, passing the science labs and diplomatic quarters. But instead of heading to another department, Ben led her toward the maintenance sections of the station. Ben, what are you doing? We don't have time for games. Just trust me, Ben said. I was down in Section C yesterday working on the communication array repairs. I heard something that made me stop and listen. They arrived at a small observation deck that overlooked one of the station's main maintenance areas. Through the transparent aluminum window, Elena could see several crew members working on various equipment. Most were human, but she noticed 3 alien crew members as well, a Zephyrian engineer, a Korthek technician, and a Thraxian systems specialist. Watch the human in the blue coveralls, Ben whispered. Elena looked where Ben was pointing. A young man, maybe 26 years old, was working on a communication panel. He had dark hair and looked like he came from Earth's North American continent. Nothing about him seemed unusual until Elena realized what she was hearing. The young man was talking to the Zephyrian engineer, but he was not speaking in English or using a translation device. He was speaking perfect Zephyrian, complete with the emotional undertones that made the language so difficult for humans to master. The Zephyrian was responding naturally. As if talking to another native speaker, Elena was about to comment when the young man turned to the Korthek technician. Without missing a beat, he began communicating in the musical tones that the crystal-based species used. The sounds he was making were not just accurate, they carried the subtle harmonic variations that indicated technical expertise and friendly cooperation. Who is that? Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben checked his tablet. Danny Murphy. He's been on the station for 8 months? Maintenance technician, level 3, originally from Boston. Elena watched as Danny finished his work with the Korthek and moved to help the Thraxian specialist. Again, his communication style shifted completely. He began speaking in the complex temporal patterns that Thraxians used, showing not just what was happening, but when he had learned about it and how he felt about the timing. This is impossible, Elena said. How does a maintenance worker know 3 alien languages? That's what I thought too, Ben replied. So I started watching him more carefully. Elena, he's not just speaking their languages. He's adapting his entire communication style to match their thinking patterns. Elena observed Danny more closely. When he spoke to the Zephyrian, his body language became more expressive, matching the emotional nature of their species. With the Korthek, his movements became more precise and rhythmic, like the crystal formations that made up their bodies. When talking to the Thraxian, he seemed to slow down and become more thoughtful, reflecting their time-focused culture. How long have you been watching him? Elena asked. 2 hours yesterday, 3 hours today. Elena, I don't think he's translating in his head. I think he's actually thinking in their languages. Elena felt her heart rate increase. Have you tested him? Do you know how many languages he speaks? I haven't approached him yet. I wanted you to see this first. Ben paused. But Elena, I heard him talking to a Vortani crew member this morning. The Vortani communicate through rapid, overlapping speech patterns that most humans find impossible to follow. Danny was keeping up with them perfectly. Elena stared at Danny as he continued his work. He was explaining something technical to all 3 alien crew members at the same time, switching between languages so smoothly that it looked effortless. More importantly, each species was responding to him as if he were one of them. We need to talk to him, Elena said. Now? Now. They made their way down to the maintenance area. Elena approached Danny during what appeared to be a break in his work. He was sitting on an equipment crate, drinking water and reviewing some technical diagrams. Excuse me, Elena said. Danny Murphy? Danny looked up. He had friendly eyes and seemed relaxed despite being approached by someone he clearly recognized. As a senior officer, yes, ma'am. Dr. Rodriguez, right? From the linguistics department? That's right. I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't help noticing your conversation with the alien crew members. Your language skills are quite impressive. Danny looked embarrassed. Oh, that. I hope I wasn't being too loud. I know some people find the alien languages distracting. Not at all. I'm actually curious about how you learned to speak them so. Well, Danny shrugged. I don't know if I'd say I speak them well. I just pick up things as I go along. When you work with people every day, you start to understand how they communicate. Elena exchanged a glance with Ben. How many alien languages would you say you're comfortable with? Comfortable? Maybe 5 or 6. I can get by with a few more if I need to. Danny paused. Is there a problem? Am I breaking some regulation? No. No problem at all. I'm just interested in how you learned so quickly. Most humans study for years to achieve basic fluency in even one alien language. Danny considered this for a moment. I guess I've always been good with languages. Even as a kid, I could pick up accents and speech patterns really fast. When I got to the station and started working with the alien crew, it just seemed natural to try to communicate with them properly. What do you mean by properly? Well, you know how humans sometimes talk to aliens like they're talking to children, slow and simple? That always seemed rude to me. These people have advanced degrees and years of experience. They deserve to be talked to like the experts they are. Elena felt a chill of excitement. So you learned their languages to show respect? I learned their languages to do my job better. If I can communicate clearly with my team, we all work more efficiently. Less mistakes, less frustration, better results. Ben stepped forward. Danny, when you speak Zephyrian, do you think in English first and then translate? Danny looked puzzled by the question. Not really. When I'm talking to Zara, that's the Zephyrian engineer, I just think about what I want to say and it comes out in Zephyrian. Same with the others. Elena's pulse quickened. You don't consciously translate? No, I mean, at first I had to think about it more, but now it just happens. It's like when you're talking to your friend from New York and you automatically start sounding a little like them. You don't plan it, it just happens. Elena and Ben looked at each other. What Danny was describing was not normal language learning. It was something much more rare and valuable. Danny, Elena said carefully, would you be interested in helping with a special project? Something that could be very important for humanity? Danny finished his water and stood up. What kind of project? A language project. But I'd need to run some tests first to better understand your abilities. Danny looked at his work schedule. I'm off duty in about 2 hours. Would that work? That would be perfect. As Danny returned to his work, Elena and Ben walked back toward the linguistics department. Elena's mind was racing with possibilities. Danny was not just a talented linguist. He was doing something that professional xenolinguists trained for decades to achieve. Then Ben, Elena said as they entered the elevator, I want you to set up a full linguistic evaluation for tonight. Every alien language we have materials for. All of them? All of them. If Danny is what I think he might be, we may have just found the most important person in human history. Ben nodded. And if he's not? Elena watched the floor numbers change as the elevator rose. Then we keep looking. But Ben, what we just saw down there, that's not normal human language ability. That's something else entirely. As the elevator doors opened, Elena felt something she had not experienced in days' hope. Danny Murphy might be the answer to humanity's impossible challenge. But first, she needed to understand exactly what made him so special. Elena spent the entire night testing Danny Murphy. She had set up her linguistics lab with every alien language database the station possessed. What she discovered was both amazing and terrifying. Danny had not just learned alien languages casually. While working, he had absorbed them at a level that professional linguists spent decades trying to achieve. In 8 months on the station, he had become functionally fluent in 12 different alien languages. Not just basic communication, but complex technical discussions, cultural references, and emotional expressions. The testing session had lasted 6 hours. Elena had started with simple vocabulary tests and moved on to increasingly complex grammar structures. Danny had handled each challenge with the same casual ease he showed while fixing equipment. When she tested his Zephyrian emotional expressions, he had made her laugh with a joke that only worked in that language. When she challenged his Korthic musical patterns, he had produced harmonies that her computer systems rated as near perfect. But the most remarkable thing was not his accuracy. It was his approach. Elena had watched hundreds of humans learning alien languages over the years. They all followed the same pattern. They memorized vocabulary, studied grammar rules, and practiced pronunciation. They built their understanding. Piece by piece, like constructing a building from individual bricks. Danny did not work that way. He seemed to absorb entire languages as complete systems. He did not translate from English to Zephyrian. He thought in Zephyrian. He did not remember Korthic musical rules. He felt the rhythm and harmony that made the language work. Elena sat in her office at dawn, reviewing the test results. Danny had left an hour ago to get some sleep before his regular shift. He had seemed pleased with how the tests went, but not surprised by his performance. To him, learning languages was just something that happened naturally. Ben Carter arrived with coffee and found Elena staring at the data on her screens. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than I hoped. Worse than I feared." Ben sat down and looked at the test scores. "These numbers look incredible." "What's the problem?" Elena rubbed her tired eyes. "The problem is that we're about to ask a maintenance technician to take the most important test in human history. And we're going to base our entire strategy on something that has never been tried before." "What do you mean?" Elena activated a holographic display showing Danny's language patterns. "Look at this. Every human linguist we've tested shows the same basic pattern. They learn each language separately and keep them isolated in their minds. They switch between languages like changing tools in a toolbox." Then studied the display. "And Danny? Danny doesn't switch between languages. He blends them. Watch this." Elena highlighted a section of the test results. "When I asked him to translate a complex technical concept, he didn't just convert it from one language to another. He found the optimal way to express that concept using elements from multiple languages." Ben leaned forward. "Is that good or bad? I don't know. It might be revolutionary. Or it might be completely useless for the council's test." Elena brought up another display showing the test requirements. "The council wants perfect grammar in 17 languages simultaneously. Danny might be able to do something even more impressive than that." "Which is?" "He might be able to create a new form of communication that incorporates all 17 languages at once." Ben stared at Elena. "Are you saying he could invent a new language during the test?" "I'm saying he might already be doing it unconsciously. Every time he talks to multiple alien species at once, he's creating a hybrid communication method that works for all of them." Elena stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the station's artificial day cycle was beginning. Normal crew members were starting their shifts, unaware that humanity's future might depend on one of their maintenance workers. "Ben, I need to talk to Captain Morrison. But first, I need to understand what we're really considering here." Elena spent the next hour reviewing everything she knew about the council's test. The examination had been designed to push candidates to their absolute limits. Previous species had sent their greatest linguistic scholars, individuals who had dedicated their entire lives to mastering alien communication. The test itself was conducted in a special chamber that could accommodate all 17 council species. The candidate would be presented with complex scenarios requiring perfect communication across all languages simultaneously. A single grammatical error, a misunderstood cultural reference, or a poorly timed emotional expression would result in immediate failure. Elena had assumed the test required separate mastery of each language. But Danny's abilities suggested a different approach might be possible. Instead of 17 separate performances, what if one human could demonstrate something the council had never seen before? At midday, Elena requested an emergency meeting with Captain Morrison. She found him in his ready room, reviewing reports from Earth Command about the political implications of the upcoming test. "Elena," Captain Morrison said as she entered, "please tell me you have good news. I have news. Whether it's good or bad depends on how much risk you're willing to take." Elena activated her portable display and showed the Captain Danny's test results. Morrison studied the data with the careful attention of someone who understood that numbers could determine the fate of civilizations. "These scores are impressive," Morrison said. "But Elena, this man is a maintenance technician. The Council will be expecting us to send our most qualified academic expert." "That's exactly why Danny might work," Elena replied. "Captain, every other species has sent traditional linguists to this test. Scholars who approach languages academically. Danny approaches them intuitively." Morrison looked skeptical. "What does that mean in practical terms?" Elena took a deep breath. "It means Danny might be able to do something that no other candidate has ever attempted. Instead of demonstrating perfect grammar in 17 separate languages, he might be able to create a unified communication system that encompasses all of them." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him processing the implications of what she was suggesting. Finally he spoke. "Elena, are you telling me that you want to send an untrained maintenance worker to the most important examination in human history, and have him improvise a new form of communication in front of the entire Galactic Council?" "Yes, and you think this will work?" "I think it's our only chance of success." Captain Morrison stood up and walked to his desk. He picked up a datapad containing messages from Earth Command. "Do you know what these are?" "Instructions from every major government on Earth about how important this test is. Economic projections showing what full council membership would mean for human civilization. Military analyses of what happens if we fail," Elena nodded. "I understand the stakes, Captain." "Do you?" "Because if we fail this test, we don't just lose council membership. We lose credibility with every advanced species in the galaxy. We become the race that was too arrogant to send their best candidate." Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "And if we send our best traditional candidate, we definitely fail." "Captain, I've tested every qualified linguist on this station. None of them can pass this test using conventional methods." Morrison returned to his chair. "So you want to gamble humanity's future on an unconventional method?" "I want to gamble humanity's future on what humans do best. We don't just learn existing systems, we create new ones. We find solutions that others never considered." The captain was quiet again. Elena could see him weighing the options. Send a traditional candidate who would almost certainly fail, or send Danny Murphy and hope his unique abilities could achieve something unprecedented. "What does Danny think about this?" Morrison asked. "He doesn't know about the test yet. I wanted your approval before I told him." "And you think he'll agree to it?" Elena considered this. "Danny doesn't seem to think his language abilities are anything special. He might not understand how big this opportunity is." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Elena, I need you to be completely honest with me. Setting aside hope and desperation, what are the realistic chances that Danny can pass this test?" Elena had been asking herself the same question all morning. With traditional methods? 0 with his unique approach? "I honestly don't know." "But Captain, Danny represents something that the Council has never seen before. He doesn't just speak alien languages, he thinks like aliens. He becomes them temporarily." "And you think the Council will accept that?" "I think the Council will be fascinated by it. They've been conducting this test for thousands of years. They've seen every possible approach to linguistic mastery. Danny might show them something completely new." Captain Morrison was quiet for several minutes. Elena could almost see him running through scenarios in his mind, calculating risks and benefits. Finally, he looked up at Elena. "I'll approve this on one condition." "What condition?" "You have 1 week to prepare him. And Elena, if this fails, history will remember us as the people who threw away humanity's future on an untested theory." Elena nodded. "I understand. I hope you do." Because Danny Murphy is about to become either the most important human in galactic history or the man who cost us our place among the stars. Danny Murphy stared at Elena Rodriguez as she finished explaining about the test. They were sitting in her office, and the morning light from the artificial windows made the holographic displays of alien languages glow softly around them. So, let me understand this, Danny said slowly. The entire human race gets to join the galactic community if I can pass a language test? That's correct. And if I fail, we stay as second-class members for another 100 years? Also correct. Danny was quiet for a moment. Elena could see him processing the enormous responsibility she was asking him to accept. Finally, he looked up at her. Dr. Rodriguez, I'm a maintenance technician. I fix communication arrays in life. Support systems? Are you sure you have the right person? Elena leaned forward. Danny, in 8 months you've learned 12 alien languages at a level that takes most people decades to achieve. You don't just speak these languages, you think in them. That's not normal human ability. I just pay attention to how people communicate. It's not that special. It is that special? Danny, I've been studying alien languages for 15 years. I've never seen anyone learn the way you do. Ben Carter entered the office carrying a large stack of data tablets. Danny, I've been analyzing your test results from last night. What you're doing isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary. Danny looked uncomfortable with the attention. What do you mean? Ben activated one of the tablets and showed Danny a complex diagram. Look at this. When most humans learn alien languages, they create separate mental boxes for each one. They switch between languages like changing channels on a communication device. Danny studied the diagram. Okay, but you don't do that. You create connections between languages. You find patterns that link them together. You're not learning 17 separate languages. You're learning one big language that has 17 different ways of expressing itself. Elena watched Danny's expression as he processed this information. She could see the moment when he began to understand what made his abilities unique. So when I talk to Zara and Kex at the same time, Danny said slowly, I'm not switching between Zephyrian and Korthak. I'm using both languages together to find the best way to communicate with both of them. Exactly, Elena said. And that gives us an idea for how to approach the Council's test. Elena activated her main display and showed Danny the test requirements. The Council wants perfect grammar in 17 languages simultaneously. Every other species has tried to master each language separately, but what if we took a different approach? Danny looked at the swirling text of alien languages floating in the air around them. What kind of different approach? What if instead of proving you can speak 17 languages perfectly, you proved you can create one language that works perfectly for all 17 species? Danny was quiet for a long time. Elena could see him thinking through the implications. Finally, he spoke. You want me to invent a new language during the test? I want you to do what you're already doing naturally. When you work with mixed alien crews, you automatically adjust your communication to work for everyone present. You're already creating a universal language, we just need to formalize it. Ben pulled up another display. We have 1 week to prepare. Elena thinks you can develop a systematic approach to what you're already doing instinctively. Danny stood up and walked to the window. Elena could see him looking out at the stars, probably thinking about the millions of beings out there who would be affected by his decision. What if I mess up? Danny asked. What if this universal language idea doesn't work? Elena joined him at the window. Then we fail. But Danny, if we send a traditional linguist, we definitely fail. They've all tried and failed for centuries. You represent something completely new. Why me? Why not someone with actual training? Because actual training teaches people to think about languages the way every other species thinks about them. You think about them differently. That difference might be exactly what we need. Danny turned back to Elena and Ben. Okay, I'll try. But I have no idea how to formalize what I do naturally. Elena smiled. That's what we're here for. The next 7 days transformed Elena's linguistics lab into something that looked like organized chaos. Elena had assembled a team of the station's best language experts, communication specialists, and cultural anthropologists. Their job was to help Danny understand and systematize his natural abilities. Dr. Lisa Wong, the team's expert on alien psychology, spent hours with Danny mapping how different species thought about communication. Each species has basic needs they express through language, she explained. Zephyrians need to share emotions. Korthiks need to maintain harmony. Thraxians need to establish temporal relationships. Danny nodded. So, if I can create a language structure that lets each species express what they need most, they'll all feel understood? Exactly. But the challenge is doing that for all 17 species at once. Danny worked with the team to identify what he called communication intentions. Every sentence any being ever spoke was trying to accomplish one of about 30 basic things. Ask for information. Share emotions, establish relationships, give instructions. Express opinions. The languages are all trying to do the same jobs. Danny explained to Elena during one of their planning sessions. They just use different tools. Zephyrians use emotional markers. Korthiks use musical harmonies. Thraxians use temporal indicators. But they're all trying to accomplish the same basic communication goals. Elena watched in amazement as Danny developed what he started calling his universal syntax. It was not a new language exactly. It was more like a flexible framework that could adapt to any species. Communication needs while maintaining perfect structural integrity. When Danny needed to communicate with time-focused Thraxians, his universal syntax automatically emphasized when things happened and how the speaker learned about them. When working with emotion-based Zephyrians, the same syntax naturally incorporated feeling states into every statement. For harmony-focused Korthiks, it adjusted to include musical elements that maintained group cohesion. Dr. Patricia Williams, the team's expert on Korthik communication, tested Danny's system extensively. This is remarkable, she told Elena. Danny's syntax doesn't just translate between languages. It finds the optimal communication method for each situation. Ben Carter documented everything they discovered. Elena, this isn't just solving the test problem. This could revolutionize how different species communicate with each other throughout the galaxy. Elena had begun to realize the same thing. Danny was not just preparing for an examination. He was developing something that could change interspecies relations forever. The night before they were scheduled to depart for the council station, Elena found Danny in the lab reviewing his notes. He had filled dozens of tablets with examples of his universal syntax in action. Are you nervous? Elena asked. Danny looked up from his work. A little, but mostly I'm excited. Excited? The syntax thing we've developed, it feels right. Like it's something all these languages were trying to become anyway. Danny gestured to the alien text surrounding them. Every species wants to be understood. Every species wants to understand others. This syntax might help them do that better. Elena sat down next to Danny. You know that if this works, you'll have given the galaxy something unprecedented. And if it doesn't work, I'll have cost humanity its chance at full membership. Elena looked at the young man who had volunteered to carry the hopes of his entire species. Danny, regardless of what happens during the test, what you've accomplished this week is extraordinary. You've shown that communication barriers between species aren't permanent. They can be overcome with understanding and creativity. Danny smiled. Dr. Rodriguez, I think that's what humans do best. We don't just accept that things are impossible. We find ways to make them possible. As Elena looked around the lab at the work they had accomplished together, she felt a mixture of pride and terror. Tomorrow, Danny would face the most challenging test in galactic history. But he would not face it as a traditional linguist trying to master 17 separate languages. He would face it as something entirely new, a human who had learned to think beyond the boundaries that separated species and found a way to connect them all. The Galactic Academic Council's testing facility was unlike anything Danny had ever seen. The massive crystalline sphere floated in empty space, surrounded by a web of energy fields that allowed ships from all 17 member species to dock safely. As the human shuttle approached the station, Danny pressed his face to the window and watched the structure grow larger. "It's beautiful," he said to Elena, who was sitting beside him. Elena nodded, but her stomach was tight with nervousness. The council built it specifically for examinations like this. Every species contributed something to make sure all forms of communication could be properly tested. Captain Morrison joined them at the window. "Danny, you understand that once we dock, you'll be on your own in the examination chamber? Elena and I can observe, but we can't help you." Danny turned away from the window. "I understand, Captain. Thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you for taking it." The docking process took an hour. The council station had to adjust its internal environment to accommodate human physiology while maintaining suitable conditions for all 17 species. Danny spent the time reviewing his notes one final time, but Elena could see that he was remarkably calm for someone about to face the most important test in human history. When they were finally escorted to the examination area, Danny got his first look at the testing chamber. It was a perfect sphere about 50 meters across, with the walls, floor, and ceiling all made of the same crystalline material as the station's exterior. But what made Danny stop and stare were the 17 different environmental zones arranged around the chamber. Each zone was designed for a different council species. The Zephyrian area glowed with soft, warm light that shifted color to match emotional states. The Corthic section resonated with musical tones that created visible patterns in the air. The Thraxian zone seemed to shimmer with temporal distortions that made time itself visible. "Amazing," Danny whispered. Elena and Captain Morrison were led to an observation deck above the chamber. Danny was escorted to the center of the sphere, where a simple chair waited for him. As he sat down, representatives from all 17 species entered their respective zones. Chairman Veltar, a tall Thraxian with silver-scaled skin, stepped forward. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's communication systems. "Human candidate Daniel Murphy, you have requested to undergo the examination for full species membership in the Galactic Academic Council. This test will determine whether humanity possesses the linguistic sophistication necessary for equal participation in galactic affairs." Danny stood up and bowed respectfully. "I understand, Chairman Veltar. I'm ready to begin." "Very well. You will demonstrate grammatical perfection across all 17 council languages simultaneously. You will be presented with increasingly complex communication scenarios. A single error will result in immediate failure. Do you have any questions?" Danny looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Each species had sent their finest linguistic experts to judge his performance. The weight of their attention was enormous, but Danny felt strangely calm. "Chairman Veltar, with respect, I would like to request a modification to the test format." Elena felt her heart stop. In the observation deck above, she grabbed Captain Morrison's arm. "What is he doing?" Chairman Veltar's expression was unreadable. "Explain your request, human." Danny took a deep breath. "I don't want to demonstrate mastery of your 17 languages separately. Instead, I would like to demonstrate something that I believe will serve the Council's goals better." The chamber fell completely silent. Elena could see the representatives from different species exchanging glances of confusion and curiosity. "Continue," Chairman Veltar said. "Your languages are all beautiful and complex, but they all serve the same purpose. They help intelligent beings understand each other. What I've developed is not a replacement for your languages, but a bridge between them. A way for all species to communicate more effectively while honoring the unique qualities of each culture." Danny gestured to the representatives around him. "Instead of showing you that I can speak like each of you separately, I want to show you that I can help all of you speak with each other more clearly." The Thraxian chairman was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him consulting with other council members through some form of private communication. "Human Danny Murphy, your request is unprecedented. This examination has been conducted in the same manner for over 3,000 years. I understand that, Chairman. But with respect, humanity might offer something that the Council has never seen before. We don't just learn existing systems, we create new ones." Elena watched from above as the 17 species representatives began discussing among themselves. The chamber filled with a mixture of sounds, colors, and energy patterns as each species used their native communication methods to debate Danny's proposal. Finally, Chairman Veltar returned to the center of the chamber. The council has decided to allow your alternative demonstration. However, the standards remain the same. You must achieve perfect communication with all 17 species simultaneously. Any failure to convey meaning accurately will result in immediate termination of the test. Danny smiled. Thank you, Chairman. I won't disappoint you. What happened next would be discussed in galactic academic circles for generations. Danny did not begin speaking in any of the traditional languages. Instead, he started using his universal syntax. And something extraordinary occurred. The chamber's advanced translation and communication systems began adapting to Danny's speech patterns. But instead of translating his words into the 17 different languages, the system started creating something entirely new. Danny's universal syntax was being processed and transmitted in a way that each species could understand perfectly while maintaining the unique elements they valued most. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Danny began, his voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. I greet you not in 17 different ways, but in one way that honors all 17 of your traditions. The Zephyrian representative straightened up as she heard emotional undertones that perfectly matched her species' communication style. The Korthic began resonating in harmony with musical patterns that seemed to emerge naturally from Danny's speech. The Thraxian nodded approvingly as temporal relationships became clear in ways that respected his species' time-focused perspective. Danny continued speaking, and Elena watched in amazement as each species responded as if they were hearing their own language spoken by a native. But more than that, they were all hearing the same message simultaneously, each in the way that made most sense to their particular form of consciousness. For 20 minutes, Danny demonstrated his universal syntax by working through increasingly complex communication scenarios. He mediated a theoretical trade dispute between species with completely different concepts of time. He explained advanced scientific concepts to beings with radically different ways of processing information. He even told a joke that somehow worked for all 17 species at once. When Danny finished, the chamber was completely silent. Elena held her breath as she waited for the council's response. Chairman Veltar stepped forward, his expression showing something Elena had never seen on a Thraxian face before: wonder. Human Danny Murphy, the council has reached a decision. You have not passed our examination as we designed it. Elena's heart sank, but Chairman Veltar continued. You have rendered our examination obsolete. For the first time in galactic history, we have witnessed the birth of a truly universal communication system. Your syntax does not simply demonstrate linguistic mastery. It offers a path toward deeper understanding between all our species. The chamber erupted as representatives from all 17 species began responding in their own languages. But Elena noticed something remarkable. Danny's universal syntax seemed to be spreading. The translation systems were beginning to incorporate his patterns, making communication between species clearer and more effective than it had ever been before. The Council votes unanimously to grant humanity full membership status, Chairman Veltar announced. Furthermore, we formally request that Danny Murphy remain here to teach his universal syntax to our diplomatic corps. Elena and Captain Morrison looked at each other in amazement. They had hoped Danny would pass the test. They had never imagined he would revolutionize galactic communication. 6 months later, Danny's universal syntax had become the foundation for a new era of interspecies cooperation. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were suddenly moving forward smoothly. Cultural exchange programs were flourishing as species discovered they could share not just information, but genuine understanding. Elena often thought about how a maintenance technician from Boston had solved one of the galaxy's greatest challenges. Danny had succeeded not by mastering the existing rules, but by understanding the purpose behind them. He had seen that beneath all the different languages and communication styles, every intelligent being in the galaxy was trying to accomplish the same: Basic goal: to connect with others and be understood, the universal syntax. Project became humanity's greatest gift to galactic civilization.